forward and make sure they're on. We've had 2 or 3 complaints for people watching the audio streaming. They can't quite hear you from time to time. So live streaming and audio video recording of ordinary meetings of council as determined by Glamorgan Spring Bay Council in April 2017. All ordinary and special meetings of council are to be audio visually recorded and streamed live. A link is available on the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council website to the YouTube platform, where the public can view the meeting live and watch recordings as previous council meetings. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulations 33, these audio-visual files will be retained by council for at least 6 months and made available for viewing live as well as online for 5 days of the scheduled meeting. The written minutes of the meeting, once confirmed, will prevail over audio-video recording of that meeting. So once again, I welcome everybody here this evening. Apologies. Mrs Turvey, have you received apologies for this evening?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Nick Farmer, Councillor Richard Parker and Councillor Jenny Woods.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 2 motions this evening. So prior to those motions, I must remind the public there are no public questions this evening. It's a special meeting and there are no public questions permitted. Firstly, I'd ask the General Manager to read out a letter from the Director of Local Government, which I believe councillors would have received in the last day, but I require this to be on the record. So, General Manager, please read out the Director of Local Government's comments.
Yep. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just, as we know, I circulated this around midday today. It states, firstly, I understand all councillors are aware that a no confidence motion in an elected mayor or any other councillor for that matter has no legal consequence under the Local Government Act. If passed, it does not remove the mayor and nor does it compel the mayor to resign. Of course, if it is passed, the mayor is entitled to consider his position in terms of the ongoing working relationships with other councillors and the community. Similarly, any councillor who moves or supports a no confidence motion is entitled to consider their position. Individually and collectively, all councillors need to consider and explain how their actions are in the community's interest. Secondly, while there are no legal consequences and without commenting on what may be the specific concerns behind this motion, in general, the use of no confidence motions against any sitting elected member of council, in my view, does not represent the council in a good light. The potential reputational damage to council as a whole is something that should be considered. Thirdly, if there are concerns, disagreements amongst councillors about the discharge of functions and powers, then in principle there should be other avenues to have those discussions respectfully, and some capacity to reach agreement around expectations. Frankly, that requires all parties to be able to give and take, and I do not detect much genuine willingness to do that. I have been weighing up the situation since I met with councillors and senior staff in spring last year, but positions and personal conflicts appear so entrenched that any soft intervention or assistant measures are unlikely to change things. This leads to the question of where does this leave this council? Either it limps on through to the October election and people endure whatever disgruntlement they hold and hope the election outcome gives them a fresh start, or the situation becomes so untenable that some form of harder intervention becomes unavoidable. I would encourage councillors to read the Glenorchy Board of Inquiry report and then reflect on their own circumstances. One lesson out of that inquiry is how personality-driven conflict can spiral quickly into dysfunction that impedes objective and good decision-making and does a complete disservice to the community. If anyone thinks that a hard intervention option like a board is what would be best for the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, then I would ask them to think again. No one would want to go through an experience like that in Glenorchy again, and the cost both in financial terms and more broadly at the community level is something the GSB community should not have to be faced with. I'll end this message with a reference to the directions that the Minister has just issued to the new Glenorchy councillors, which is a website address. The intent behind some of these directions, particularly in governance and training, is to ensure there is a mechanism in place where there are clear expectations and that people can be held to account. GSB could choose, for example, to develop its own statements or expectations and an objective way in which people can be held to account against them. That might be one way to take the personality issues out of performance concerns. But as stated, that would require genuine willingness by all to be open to finding ways to change the circumstances for the better. Ultimately, the decisions and actions of councillors will determine the future. I trust what I have outlined, regardless of what occurs at today's meeting, will be considered.
Thank you, General Manager. We're now on to agenda item 2, which is the notice of the 2 motions. But prior to getting into that at this stage, I have a question to the author, Councillor Crawford. At this point in time, do you feel that you would want to withdraw the motion, or do you want to continue with the motions?
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in withdrawing, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That being the case, thank you, Councillor Crawford. On the basis that the 2 motions are related to me, I now incline and will leave the meeting, and thank you very much for your lack of confidence. Thank you. I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the circumstances, we no longer have a quorum. I just have to check the rules in relation to what we will need to do. Just give me a moment, please. General Manager, the council meeting can be closed. We no longer have a quorum.
My understanding is, Deputy, that the council meeting has to be closed and abandoned.
Abandoned, yes, that's my understanding as well. Can I just, with the indulgence of the meeting, I would just like to check the meeting procedures in relation to that, if I may. But I'm pretty confident.
I'm through you, Deputy. We mucked up last time by adjourning it instead of abandoning it. So
yeah, we did indeed.
After the abandoned meeting, there's a set of procedures that we have to carry out.
Yeah.
So.
In this circumstance, though, we believe it's an abandonment.
Yes.
In accordance with section what of the meeting procedures? 12. 12 of the meeting procedures. Let's get the wording. Thank you. I did actually have it in my computer. If a quorum is not present within half an hour after a meeting is to start, the meeting is to be abandoned. Well, we had a quorum. The meeting is abandoned. Just to record the following details of the day. Right. So the meeting is to be abandoned in accordance with section 12 of the Local Government Meeting Procedure Regulations, part 2, for the absence of a quorum. Mr. General Manager, that's correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending the meeting. Unfortunately,
Can I have clarification on that? Is that after half an hour? It's
Well,
abandoned, or
that is probably my question too, but it says if a quorum is not present within half an hour after a meeting is to start.
Yeah.
The meeting's actually started and we now have lost the thing. So I think there's actually another section in the Act which says if a councillor has to leave the meeting because of it, and then it becomes a lack of a quorum. So there is another section that does actually deal with it, but I just can't recall what that section is right now. I think it's under conflict of interest in the Act. So the fact that that has actually happened with the Mayor declaring an interest in leaving, I think that invokes the lack of a quorum, councillor. That's the way I would see it, but I would need to take more qualified advice on that.
Deputy, that actually refers to people being stuck in traffic jams and everything else at half an hour. I mean, clearly we've had 3 apologies and the Mayor has now left, so there's no chance of a quorum being formed within half an hour. So.
Okay. What about the section that I've just referred to, though, when a councillor leaves a meeting, and I know there is a section in the Act which says that with the permission of the Minister, the councillor can return, although I seriously doubt the Mayor will return, but there is another section. So I just want to be sure that if we're going to abandon this meeting or close this meeting, we have done it in accordance with the Act. Because the abandonment actually requires the meeting to be recalled in 14 days. Do you recall the section I'm referring to?
I do, about the that's to give you a quorum, but I don't think that the Mayor is going to return to the meeting.
No,
so,
I think you're right.
I don't believe we have a quorum and we need to abandon the meeting
All right.
and do after that what we have to do.
All right. All right. Thank you.
I'm just
Councillor?
actually saying, suggesting that the Mayor would need to be really asked if that's the situation, rather than just assuming that he's not going to return. Would be, I mean, we can't assume anything. It's not, our call.
No, true. I agree.
Deputy Mayor Arnold, also on radio this morning, the Mayor did say that he would listen to what councillors had to say, thank them very much, and say he wasn't standing down. So I assumed that he was going to remain
In the meeting. Me too. Yeah, that would have been my reasonable assumption too, Councillor Wisby. I have to be honest and say I'm disappointed that the Mayor has chosen the action that he has. But anyway. All right. I think in the circumstances, I probably, as acting chair, I probably don't have any other alternative but to abandon the meeting in accordance with section 12. I thank you very much to the members of the public for attending. I'm sorry that you have wasted your time coming along to a meeting and not hearing the debate. Thank you very much, everybody.
Could we have the speakers?
I need to make